It's Boxing Day out there, and many of you today hit the stores looking for that special deal. Now, of course, Boxing Day to me doesn't really mean all that much when it comes, of course, to, shopping. I don't really care anymore because I basically have everything I need. We were giving gifts yesterday, and my daughter gave me a gift, and my wife gave me a gift, and I was grateful for both gifts. I really was. But I was thinking to myself, I don't need to go to the store today to pick up a new TV set or, get the latest gizmo or gadget. Because basically, when I look at what I'm doing, it's pretty good, actually. So I'm grateful for that. But, also as well, when we had our Christmas celebrations yesterday, I really came to value something. And so today I want to share with you what I've learned. I've learned that it's not what I have in my life, but who I have in my life that really counts. Yesterday, of course, I spent some time with my wife and my daughter. And in a few days, this Sunday, for example, we're going to be having our entire family joining us for a big Christmas celebration. I have my son who lives in the same community, my daughter who lives in the same community, and then my other daughter and my other son are going to come down with their families. And we're going to have a great, big, huge celebration, of course, for what we would call Christmas celebration. We still have actually quite a few presents under the tree, which are for members of our families. It's so important to recognize it's not what we have in our lives that count, but who we have in our lives. One of my favorite movies, of course, around Christmas is that one with Jimmy Stewart, which is It's a Wonderful Life. Here you have, the plot of the story is this. Here you have this young man who's been living in the same community, doing the same thing over and over again. And he's thinking to himself, I really haven't accomplished all the things that I want to accomplish. He was ambitious, he was, skillful. And so he thought, what? I am not fulfilling my destiny where I live. He had forgotten a very important fact that wherever you are to bloom where you are planted. And so here you have this young man who is, struggling with his self esteem, struggling with his so called ambition, and thinking that he's missed the mark, not recognizing that he has become a blessing where he is. And it isn't until he finds himself in a real crisis, where he finds himself confronted with actually, as the story goes, he never lived. And he began to realize the incredible impact that he had. Well, when he was given a second chance, according to the movie, he appreciated not what he had accomplished, but the people that was in his life. And of course, that is the real miracle. If we have someone in our lives that loves us and cares for us, and we're not alone, we are so blessed. Did you know that there are so many people today that are just plain lonely? They go to work every day. They, hang out with their fellow workers, but then they go home to a lonely home. They don't have people in their lives. And there's a vast majority of people who are like that. If you are an individual who has one or two friends, you have no idea how really blessed you are. And I just want to remind you about one thing. If you want to have a friend, you've got to show yourself friendly. I have a granddaughter. Her name is Sarah. And Sarah has an incredible knack of making friends in just about any situation. I saw a perfect example of it last summer. We went down to a local lake near our community. And it is, it was a beach. She's about 8 years old, and instantaneously, she had her own little posse of friends that were playing with her. We thought, well, maybe she'll get a little bit bored. She wasn't the least bit bored. You know why? Because she's a friendly little girl, and she gets out there and she finds people and children who, there was this one little guy that was standing off by himself. My daughter or my granddaughter, not even the slightest problem. She went over and she invited him to be part of her posse. You should have seen his face. He was playing in the water, doing, kind of looking bored, kind of looking longingly towards her. And she looked over and she just walked over and said, "Would you like to join us?" Well, that little guy was as happy as a clam. He was, and he was part of her posse, and she made him feel welcome. I'm so grateful for people like that. And, when you want to have friends, you got to put yourself out there. Now, from time to time, yes, you're going to be rejected, but you don't take the rejection personally. You just say, okay, no problem at all. And then you go on to the next person. Why? Because there are people out there that need that type of attention. They need someone to initiate the conversation, someone who will say, "You know what? I think you might be a pretty good friend." And then, of course, they are that friend. And so it's important to have people in your life. And like I said, if you're going to have, if you're going to have friends, you got to be friendly as well. Well, whatever it takes today to bring people into your life, be willing to do it. And one of the ways that you can do it is simply being kind. I love what Paul had to say in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verses 4 to 8. He says, "Love is patient and love is kind." If you can't be anything else today, be kind. It's Boxing Day. You may be out there in the shopping malaise that goes on. Open the door for someone. Be kind to someone today. Maybe today, give someone a call. Yesterday, for example, it was around 10 o'clock, and I have a list of people that are on my phone when it comes to, of course, saying, they're part of my text situation. Yesterday, at 10 o'clock, I text every single one that was on my phone. And what did I say? "Merry Christmas." Well, my phone literally burned up for about an hour and a half with all the returns from different people. One guy said to me, "I haven't heard from you for a long time." And we had this wonderful tech situation where he was telling me what was going on in his life. He even said, "I was feeling kind of lonely today." He says, "Me and the cat." So he says, "I was sure glad to hear from you." It was just, it actually only took me about 10 minutes to go through my list and just say, "Merry Christmas." And it was amazing how many people texted me back and said to me, "You know what? I haven't heard from you for a long time. So great to hear from you." And you know what else it started? It was my older brother, Doug, who, texted me and said, "Merry Christmas." Now, my older brother, Doug, and I, for a number of years, was kind of estranged. But in the last 10 years, we've become very good friends. And it's exciting to be able to reconnect with family members as well. Well, he started that, and I'm thinking, I'm going to just do that today. It was absolutely a wonderful experience. I mean, every time I was, I would be sitting down, all of a sudden, bing, up comes another text. And it was wonderful to have that experience. And it actually, when I talked about the first hour and a half, it actually went on until last night. And I checked my phone this morning just to see if anybody else was going to have anything to say. I didn't have anybody today, but the simple fact is that I was willing to take just a few minutes of my time and to say, "Merry Christmas." You know what? It was a wonderful experience. It was wonderful to catch up. There was this one particular guy that, I came very good friends with. We would meet every Tuesday night for coffee. And I, of course, texted him and said, Merry Christmas. And he texted back and he reflected on the fact that every Tuesday night we would get together and have coffee together. It was great. And he just, his faith was so strengthened by my weekly visits. And then to hear from me, again, it was a wonderful conversation. Have another neighbor who was living right beside me. And I text him from time to time. And we have wonderful, wonderful conversations by text. It's easy to do these days. So, do that today. Tell somebody how much you appreciate them. Maybe get on the phone or do a special visit. Last time I was in the city, I made a very special visit to my friend Kent. Now, Kent, of course, was a member of my congregation for a number of years. Of course, no longer am I doing that congregation. But the interesting fact was I dropped in to see him, and he said, and every time that I see him, he says, I'm so glad that you came to see me. See, Kent prays for me every single day, and I appreciate that. And so spending time with people, building relationships are, of course, what Christmas is all about, what holidays are all about, and also as well, being a blessing in someone's life every day. And you don't know how or when they're going to start because they can start so innocently. You could be like my granddaughter, Sarah, and just, get out there and include somebody in your circle. It could be just a word of encouragement. It could be an activity. I want to remind you about one thing. People may not always remember what you said, but they're always going to remember how you made them feel. And don't be afraid to expand your circle of friends. The one phrase that they made in that movie, It's a Wonderful Life, and it simply went like this: no man is ever poor when he has friends. So do that today. And also, as well, remember, every day is an opportunity to enhance and touch someone's life. I've used this illustration before. There was a great Iroquois chief whose name was Ketchikan. I was actually watching a video yesterday about, how many times we have this myth that the indigenous people get along with everybody. It was a myth because in the early days of colonization of both Canada and United States, the French and the English would exploit the rivalries between the different nations. For example, there was the Mohicans or the Mohawks. There was the Iroquois. There were the Cree. There was, all these different groups. Well, the most powerful of all of those early indigenous groups was the Iroquois. They were a warlike individual, and they loved to attack other tribes in, of course, their area. And they would always be expanding their area. Well, the greatest and the most warlike of all those chiefs was Ketchikan. Ketchikan loved to attack and conquer and deal with people, and he was actually pretty cruel at it. Well, he heard the message of Jesus Christ, and his nature completely and totally changed. All of a sudden, he wasn't this cruel individual. He wasn't this great warrior chief. He was this kind and humble individual. One of his elders asked him, he said, we see what you were like before, and we see what you are like now. You were a man of war, but now you are a man of peace. How can that happen? He said, well, it's quite simple. He says, I look at another individual and I try to walk in his moccasins. Basically, what he was saying was, he says, I try to walk in the shoes of that person. I try to empathize with him. You see, sympathy is when you feel something for someone and, but it really doesn't affect you. Empathy is putting yourself in the place of that person and feeling their pain. That's empathy. And that's what Ketchikan would try to do. He would try to put himself in, of course, the place of that person and try to think how they would actually. Often, what happens to us is when we go through a difficult experience, that experience will help us to help those who go through similar experiences. My wife, for example, 15 years ago, went through the process of cancer. So we walk through the cancer journey. And when we come across somebody who has cancer, my brother, for example, just passed away from cancer. So we understand the journey that they went through. We also understand the hope that can happen when you actually conquer cancer. My wife is with me today because she's a cancer survivor. Well, the simple fact is, when you go through an experience, you have deep empathy for them. And you also are able to say someone, there's hope for this situation. That's the beauty of day-to-day kindness and affirmation and confirmation. So what I've learned today, it's not what I have in my life that is so important. It's who I have in my life that is important. And let me just encourage you to value every relationship that you have and build on those relationships. And don't forget, maybe today, if the urging hits you, text somebody, call somebody, visit somebody, be a blessing, be an encouragement, because you never know. You little act of kindness might not just change their day, it could actually change their life. I love to tell the story about this one fella in China. And every day he lives in a major city. And in his city, they have this very high bridge over the Yangtze River. The Yangtze River, of course, is one of the most powerful rivers in all the world. And it's the main river, of course, in China. In that city, they have a bridge, a high bridge over the river. And many, many people have jumped off that bridge because of the fact that they don't see any value in living any longer. About 3 or 4 years ago, he read about people jumping off the bridge and the problem that it was. So he made it his mission to go to the bridge every single day and, talk people out of jumping off the bridge. He offers them friendship. He offers them kindness. He offers them compassion and empathy. And you know what? In those 3 to 4 years, he has literally, rescued 700 people plus who saw no value in staying alive. And he was able to say, listen, there is, of course, help for you. And not only did he help them, but he built a network of individuals and also supports for these people. He didn't just say, I'll talk to you. He's actually went about and built a support system for those people. He recognized it wasn't just talking them off the bridge, but also making them feel that they were valuable, that there were friends out there. And he built a network like that. That is such a great story. You may not talk somebody off a bridge today, but maybe your text, maybe your visit, maybe your call, maybe your kindness in an act of kindness and love could change their whole day. Let's do that today. And remember, what we've learned is not what we have in our lives. There's an old saying that goes like this: you will never find a Brinks trucks following a hearse. You can't take it with you. I know the early pharaohs, we have these great big monoliths and we have these tombs in, of course, Egypt, of individuals who tried to take it with them. You can't take it with you. So value every relationship, value every person in your life, and build on those relationships. And also include people in your friendships, because you never know. That friendship could become one of the most valued things that you have in your life. That's my exhortation as we find ourselves now in, of course, Boxing Day. And if you have a chance to buy something for someone, hey, do that as well. You could make Christmas every single year. Remember, every day is a gift, and every day is a present. My name is Robert Dean Steele. By the way, if you do like what you are hearing, I always encourage you to press the like button and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Also, as well, check out my daily YouTube shorts every single day. I put on different videos choosing to use a positive and optimistic for life. You know why? Because being a negative is easy. Being a mocker or a cynic is easy. It's a lot tougher to actually be someone who's positive. And here's one final thought. Did you know that you and I can actually reduce our carbon footprint? You say, really? How can I do that? Well, did you know that it takes more muscles to form a frown than it does to actually smile? So let's be energy efficient today. And instead of frowning, let's smile some more. You never know. That smile could just make someone's day. My name is Robert Dean Steele. Thank you for joining me today and having yourself a great and godly day. Again, it's not what you have in your life that's so important, but who you have in your life that really counts. Think about that.